The year was 1956, the city, Hanover, New Hampshire, the location, Dartmouth College. It was at a workshop held that summer that the field of artificial intelligence research was founded. Now, if you're like me, you may think that AI, as well as machine learning, are fairly new developments. Prior to some research for this morning's panel discussion, I would have speculated that AI has been in our lives for 20, maybe 30 years, yet the actual answer is 66 years. I'm amazed by this, though even more amazed at the progress that has occurred in recent years, progress that we will discuss this morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Harold Zeishner. I'm the Managing Director of North Carolina for Seneca Resources. Seneca is the host and sponsor for this morning's discussion, part of our monthly professional series. Many of you may know me from TAG, Triangle Area Analytics Group. For over 12 years, I've been hosting analytics events like the one this morning, both in person and now virtually. With the national and global reach we have through webinar technology, TAG has rebranded to the Seneca Data and Analytics Series, a small group that was started in the Research Park of North Carolina, Research Triangle Park of North Carolina, is now one with a much larger footprint. For those of you attending this discussion for the first time, welcome. We look forward to your thoughts about this morning's discussion and your thoughts about future topics. In a few moments, our highly acclaimed panelists will introduce themselves and will share a bit about their background with AI. We will cover a variety of topics related to AI and ML. I encourage those in attendance to be engaged. You can ask questions to our panelists utilizing the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We will do our best to get to your questions. Additionally, for those in our audience, please use the chat feature to introduce yourself and where you are from. We would love to collaborate during and after this discussion. We will be making a recording of this session available. Our sponsor this morning is the company I'm proud to work for, Seneca Resources. For the last 12 years, Seneca has provided highly skilled technical talent to our clients. I have been asked by many why I decided to join Seneca. One of the reasons is the staggering growth for the last 4 years, growth that far outpaces the industry average. What does that mean besides being at a highly successful company? It means my teammates at Seneca are experts in identifying talent and delivering that talent to our clients. The demand for skilled talent is still at historical highs, especially in AI, ML, and analytics, as well as cloud, software engineering, and security. Another reason I joined Seneca, really the main reason, is the people that I get to work with each day. Hardworking, sincere, problem-solving, ethical. Those are just a few of the ways that I would describe our team. Finding the right talent for your organization and doing so with a company that understands your technical environment and your culture are appealing, Seneca is the right partner for you. Before we begin, 2 quick announcements. At the end of January, Seneca will be hosting a professional series event on cloud engineering. We will share more information on that shortly. Also, if you have ideas on topics for future data and analytics discussions, please let us know. You can share with your Seneca Resources contact, or let's connect on LinkedIn. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to learn more about the evolution of AI and ML. So we're going to go ahead and get started. You can ask each of our panelists to take a moment or two to introduce themselves, your name, title, company, a bit about your analytics background. And we're going to go ahead and start with Minoo this morning. Good morning, Minoo.
Hey, thanks, Harold. I'm super excited to be here this morning. I am Minoo Agarwal. I'm a data and analytics evangelist with a successful history of transforming data assets into enterprise capabilities, moving IT from a cost center to a value creator. In my current role, I am leading the charge on short-term and long-term strategic roadmap for RTI's analytic capabilities that promotes RTI's strategic goal of digital transformation for its corporate functions. RTI is an independent nonprofit institute that provides research, development, and technical capabilities to government and commercial clients worldwide.
Wonderful. Minoo, thank you very much. And thank you. This is, I believe, the second panel that we've done through the year. So excited to see you again and excited for to hear more about your journey with AI, as well as what you can share about RTI. We will move to Sunil. Good morning, Sunil.
Hey, good morning. It's great to be here. It's good to see so many of my own colleagues also from Blue Cross, North Carolina here. My name is Sunil Gupta, and I lead the Data Science Center of Excellence at Blue Cross NC. I have a team of data scientists and ML engineers, and we are responsible for transforming data into actions for business teams across the enterprise. As for myself, my journey in analytics started more than 30 years ago. I've been in fairly different industries over the years. I started my career in telecom, doing voice recognition research and applying voice recognition to problems in speech therapy, language learning, and so on and so forth. I spent a few years in financial services industry, and more recently, before Blue Cross, which I joined 3 years ago, I was at IEEE, applying natural language processing to tease insights from scientific articles. So I've seen AI ML evolve from many different perspectives in different industries, and I think that's a perspective I'm hoping to share today.
Thank you, Sunil. And I know we were chatting. You've been down here in Raleigh for about 3 years, and welcome to the area. But I think, again, what's exciting is that we've got an audience today of individuals throughout the U.S., and I even think there's a couple people from overseas. So to get your perspective, and certainly from a healthcare perspective, is something that I know we all have a personal interest. So great job by me. I think it's working right now. It may not be. If not, the good news is, oh, my connection just went for a second. Not sure. Oh, I'm back. So I'm having a connection issue and a chat issue. So the good news is this cost nobody any money. So we'll worry about refunds later. But thanks everyone for your patience, and we got the chat up now as well. And I see Daniel, who I do know is overseas, just joined. So Robert, look forward to hearing from you.
Hey, thank you, Harold. Appreciate the invite today. Like everyone else, I'm excited to be here. I really do enjoy learning about what everyone else is doing, because sometimes you get a little isolated in your own area of field. So my name is Robert Lake. I am the Chief Technology Officer at PrecisionHawk, and I've led their data science effort for over 2 years, as well as their development effort now. What we work on is on distribution transmission systems. So all those power lines you see around your where you live and out in the fields, we actually fly drones, and our AI will actually detect all the different components on there and tell you what state of condition those components are in. Really important for us to be able to detect components that potentially could be a threat to life or property. And for those who've lived in California, know all about the big fires they've had over there. So this is a really big, important area. It's also a very challenging area because we need to constantly educate people what AI can and can't do. So as much as I enjoy building great AI systems with my team, we also have a lot of communication we need to do with our customers to help them understand the limitations of what can be done and can't be done with those systems.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert. Well, exciting that we have a panel this morning that's going to give you a technology view of AI. Certainly we'll touch on healthcare, research. So great perspective. But as we get started, Minoo, we do have a large audience, and I see that we're continuing to have people that are coming in this morning. This audience has various levels of experience with AI and ML. In your view, how would you describe AI?
That's a good starting point, Harold. Thank you. Oftentimes, AI, when people talk about it, images of sentient beings loom large. And so what I wanted to do is level set, like give some definitions and even contextual examples of what AI for this discussion and for majority of part when we read about AI in media, what it means. AI, as we all know, it's a science, and it's a science of training systems to emulate human tasks through learning and automation. And AI, it can be broadly, very broadly categorized into two components, ANI, which is the artificial narrow intelligence. And this is the area where machines are trained to do one thing and improve over time. The giant strides we have seen in the last few years has been primarily in this area. For example, scanning checks to be deposited, smart speakers, is examples. And then there is the other component, which is AGI, which is the artificial general intelligence. And that's the stuff of sci-fi like Iron Man, Transformers. Unfortunately, there hasn't been much progress in this area, although this was the initial thought that started the field, but it's been proven hard to break through. So for intents of this conversation, when we talk about AI, we're focusing on ANI and getting more specific within that, machine learning and deep learning. What is machine learning? Machine learning is a subset of AI in which machines, they learn how to complete a certain task without being explicitly programmed to do so. And then within that, deep learning is another subset of ML in which the tasks are broken down and distributed into machine learning algorithms that are organized in consecutive layers. Each layer builds up on the output from the previous layer, and together these layers constitute an artificial neural network that mimics sort of the distributed approach to problem solving that is carried out by neurons in our brains. Think about the driverless cars. That is a good example of deep learning. So with that level set, I think we could proceed with the broader discussion on AI.
Wonderful. Thank you, Minoo. I've got a question. You mentioned that AGI is kind of where the field started originally, but we have not made that progress yet. Is that just we have not caught up from a technology standpoint, or is there a basic reason why we have not been able to move forward, have as much progress there in AGI?
Or like, if you think about AGI, or like, let's go back to it being all encompassing, having the conscience, right? When I say things like, I like this, like there is so much of nuance to it that AI, we haven't reached that capability to decipher that context just yet. So most of the inroads we have done is in making sure one particular task is being done and is being done well, but we haven't had that all the different components like NLP, CV, all of it working in consortium. We've started making some inroads, but we're far from the AGI capabilities that when we think about AI, what we think about for most part.
I appreciate providing that context. As someone who's fascinated in this field, but not an expert, that helps. And I think the nuance piece is always something people are wondering, understanding multiple meanings of something or how much emphasis you could put on there. So thank you for giving our audience that perspective into AI and ML. Sunil, Robert, anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think we can do a really quick example to express on that, because this is where I find myself a lot of times when I'm working with customers to help them understand what AI can't do. And it's that cognitive reasoning. So if I give you a picture and say, what's wrong with this picture? And there is supposed to be a house there, because you're like, wait a minute, there was a house there yesterday, so there should be a house here today. AI can't do that, because when it's looking at that image, it's like it can detect everything on there, but it needs multiple different layers. And it's that cognitive reasoning is what we're not good at doing or transferring into algorithms. You have to build bigger systems, which slow things down. And every time I talk with people and I ask them, okay, you're disappointed with the AI right now, why? And they say, well, because when I put an expert in and they see these three things, they expect to see this as an output. And I said, well, how do you expect the AI to do that? What is it about what you've learned, all the learnings you have, all these other inference things that experimented through your own life and experiences? we can't push all that into AI just yet. And I think that's where a lot where they're struggling.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would add is that human beings are very good at filling context, that AI systems just have huge challenges today. And that's where, but having said that, there are just so many useful things you can do with that narrow AI capabilities itself. And I think that's where, that's what you've seen in the last several years, that value being realized.
Wonderful. Appreciate that perspective. And Sunil, we're going to stick with you right now. As far as some of the key attributes for success for an AI ML professional, how would you classify or quantify that? What does make someone very successful in this field?
So that's a topic that's been really near and dear to me for a long time. And in fact, one of the things that I did when I started at Blue Cross was really look at what do we need to be when we grow up? What do we need to do, right? And so to me, there's a hierarchy of skills sort of that are really critical for AI ML. It begins with sort of core technical skills, right? You know, you must have SQL, you must know statistics, you have to have some decent experience in a programming language such as Python, for example, or some other language, or any of those. I think at least what I found, I've often found is that the thing that's lacking is really strong software engineering perspective often. So that's one area that's really important. More and more, one should really be able to think at a systems level. Bringing the systems perspective is really key to being a successful AI ML professional. Other thing that's really important is the domain, right? To be a successful in AI ML, you really need to understand the domain in which you're working. So for me, for example, in healthcare, if I don't have any interest in healthcare, it's very hard to be a very successful AI ML professional in healthcare. And often that's a point that gets lost among either new graduates or folks looking to transition, is that how passionate are you about the domain? I think that really matters. Like for myself, I find healthcare to be fascinating. And I've often wondered why it took so long before I got into healthcare. I spent 30 years in other industries. And now that I'm in healthcare, I just find it absolutely fascinating. So I want to learn everything about healthcare that I can. And that makes me more effective as an AI ML leader, right? And same thing applies to professionals. But I'd like to give one example through an anecdote. I think that sort of brings it all together. You know, a couple of years ago, I was speaking to a potential interview candidate, and he asked me a question. He said, "Hey, Sunil, you've been in this space in different forms for many years. What's one advice, one aspect about AI, ML, and data science in general that you can tell me?" And I thought about it, and I said, you know, when we are in elementary schools, we're always asked to solve simultaneous equations, right? Everybody here, I think, has gone through that, either themselves or the kids today, right? You have to solve simultaneous equations. And when you start as an elementary school student, you're given a simultaneous equation, you mechanically learn how to solve it. But when the test comes, the test almost always specifies it as a word problem, right? There's a word problem that's given, and one of the things the child has to do is transform that word problem into a precise simultaneous equation problem, right? Because then they know how to solve it mechanically. It's very easy. I think in some sense, data science, AI, ML is similar. It's really important, given a business problem. One of the areas where I have often found people have challenges is taking the business problem and stating that as a precise data science or an AI, ML problem. Because once you can do that, there are a lot of tools available. You can almost Google a solution in many cases, right? And so it's that ability to take a business problem and transform that into a precise data science problem is one area where I would say, as AI, ML professionals, we must get better and better at. And then, in fact, as you do that, you become stronger in consulting with the business stakeholders, and in fact, move up to the curve even more mature, where you can now interact with the business stakeholders and help them think through the precise business problem that they should be working on that can be solved through AI, ML, right, to truly make an impact. Right? That's where I would say, I think it's to be successful, technical is given. It's the domain skills and consultative skills where it really matters, right?
nodding their head in agreement. Is it critical to have that domain experience in your mind?
Is that a question for me?
For Minoo, for Robert.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I might have cut out again there. I ask everyone to bear with me for a little bit here. Sunil mentioned the domain experience being critical. Do you feel, I see your heads nodding during that. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in AI ML, you'd often hear people say you need to have a diverse team. And oftentimes it gets interpreted as people with diverse backgrounds. All of it is important. But I also want to emphasize what Sunil said, diverse teams in terms of people with business context, people with the technical capabilities. You have to have a very broad and diverse team to be successful in AI. So I very much agree with Sunil's perception and context that he laid out for the group here.
Wonderful, thank you, Minoo. A quick question, Sunil. You said you're for 30, and then we're gonna move on to another topic. You mentioned that you were for 30 years. You were not in healthcare, but you talk about this domain experience being required. I imagine you had to come up to speed fairly quickly. Are you saying that as long as you've got that passion and the ability to really dig in, that you can come from a different domain, you know, financial services into healthcare, or vice versa?
Absolutely. And I think the other benefit you get if you have worked in other domains is that you bring that experience and that ability to take something which is in finance industry, for example, or telecom, or like NLP that I did for in scientific publishing industry. That experience actually can be translated to a lot of problems in healthcare. So, but being able to contextualize learnings from different domains into your domain, you have to really understand the domain, right? And so it's the cross-fertilization of ideas that becomes feasible if you really spend energy and if you're curious about learning a new domain.
Perfect, perfect. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. One thing, again, I'll encourage those in the audience. We've got the Q&A function, should be operating good. If you've got some questions for our panelists, we would love to hear them. So please utilize that. Moving on, though, actually from a project standpoint. So Robert, we know that communication is key to delivering any successful project. Specific to AI, how do you improve stakeholder communication in AI projects?
So this is one I've seen. I've tried myself, failed many times, and eventually turned around to be successful. So this is coming from multiple different areas of how I've done this. Ultimately, the first thing you got to understand is we can't treat AI as a black box. As much as the executives will hire you to be the expert in this area, they still have to follow some form of logically correct reasoning. They have to be able to follow you from your point A to your solution. If they can follow you through that without you overbearing them on too much math or too much technology, then they can follow and they'll trust you in there. So trust is key for communication. To do that, as an industry, we've been developing lots of different ways of building systems together. And one thing in AI operations that's really come up is called the meta store. And there's a lot of great companies out there, and I'm not advocating any particular one because I've used multiple different ones personally and different ones for different companies. If you look at companies like Weights and Biases, Comet ML, Neptune AI, what they have is this great ability to be able to store your metadata and then add in reporting functions to that. What does that mean? Instead of you as a data scientist in your notebook building all your graphs and trying to control all your experiments together, they sync all those together. So what helps, if the four of us were all working on the same AI project, you can see what I've been doing. You can see all the different options I've taken. You can follow my logic, but you can also see the reporting coming out. And I haven't spent hours on building those graphs. And so that's really important. Now you take that one step further and you take that report and allow your stakeholders to see a higher level version of that report. They can actually see progress going on. Because when I come back to working with stakeholders, one of the things stakeholders really don't like about AI projects, normal traditional project, I have a start date, I have a finish date, and we have stages. AI projects are always cyclic. I learn something, I go back to the beginning, I learn something, I go back to the beginning, I go round and round and round in circles. And believe me, I've had enough senior vice presidents shout at me, scream at me, what's your team doing? Are you actually getting anything done? Because you're back at the beginning again. And I was like, no, this is the way it works. As we learn more, we grow more. And it's where's that off point to help them going on. But they can, by using these Metastore type of systems, it actually enables them to see it growing, and they can see the progression. And when you tie that with your end customer, you tie that with your stakeholders, and they get to see that, that really works on building this communication out. So being able to see what's going on without them having to have a master's degree or a PhD in statistics, or to understand what's going on with machine learning. I have that currently with my CEO. He knows nothing about these things. I've been training him, educating him, going through, and he gets the base principles. But what he's able to do is see, okay, this is project X. These are the goals they're supposed to achieve. And I can see, oh yeah, they've made those goals. And now they're moving into deployment. And when it goes in deployment, they can see how it's being monitored and say, oh yeah, it's working okay. Customers should be good. And they can see how it's going. Also, when you tie in the cost, which is also important, because people not coming from the business acumen, they don't realize that AI is extremely expensive, especially when you start messing around with generic products from like SageMaker and stuff like that. That can get very expensive. And so it's how do you manage those costs as well. But seeing all that come through in something like a Metastore works really well. And it becomes a lot easier from a project point of view as well when we're looking at technical escalation. So if Minoo or Sunil want you to do a peer review of me, they can go through, they can see exactly what I've done, where they've gone, and they can add comments into the report. Oh, Robert, have you thought about this? We saw you did this with your models. I'm thinking, because I've seen this in a different type of model, if you took this approach, that may help you get the next X bump that you need to be able to improve your model going forward. And so it brings it all together instead of us sharing different documents in different places. So Metastores, really important. There's a lot of them out there. Find one that works well with your system and your approach, and use them, because it really does, one, save you a lot of time and money, but two, help improve your communication.
Wonderful, Robert. I appreciate that. So it sounds like, having this ability to look at what's being done is crucial, but are you meeting with these stakeholders on any type of cadence? Is it to share, to answer their questions? As you said, you go up and down and there's advancements and then we're coming back. You've got the tools for people to look to see what's being done, but what is the communication from a meeting or a discussion standpoint?
So from a meeting discussion standpoint, I could tell you, using these tools, and when I brought these tools into my current company, we were meeting every single week, if not twice a week, with a customer, because the way the project was on the way to failing, and they didn't trust anything. And by putting these tools in place, what we were able to do is the customer then said, okay, back off to 2 weeks, back off to 4 weeks. And so we started meeting once a month, because now they started having confidence that we were actually moving forward and we were achieving where they wanted to go. So that's one piece in there. The other thing in there as well is when we have our conversations with non-technical people. So if you're a data scientist, you have a technical conversation with me, I'll keep it at a high level, but then we dig in where we need to go and we come back out. But once we hit with our customers or other stakeholders, we talk about the problem. We talk about how the problem is solved or being solved, or how much of the problem has been solved, and why, when we take them through a logically correct reasoning exercise. In other words, here's your data, and when we look at your data, the model does this sort of interpretation and gives this outcome, and here's the reason we believe why. And they follow through that. They go, yes, we agree with that, or actually, no, that's counter to my intuitive way I believe the business runs. And so we dig into that a little bit more about what is it about their knowledge they have. And by the way, they're not always right. Their knowledge, what they've had, is intuitively said, if I pull these two levers, I get an outcome over here. There's actually maybe a third lever that they don't realize that they're pulling is actually the real cause. And so you're helping them with that logical, correct reasoning. And when I stick more to that level, we're more successful, our meetings are smaller, and the customers are a lot more capable. When the customer starts going, I don't believe you, I want to see your code, I want to see this, I want to see that, you're in a death spiral, and things are not going to go well. Because having run development teams, I can tell you, you have one group of developers, another group of developers, outstanding coders in both sides, they will attack and resolve that problem completely different.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
I think
you end up getting into that problem.
Yeah, which I think is a great segue to our next topic. And we've got a couple questions I'm going to get to from the audience shortly. But as we're thinking about the first half of this discussion, Minoo has shared her view of AI, Sunil about the key attributes for AI ML professional, Robert the communication that is vital to AI projects. Minoo, coming back to you. Let's get a little more strategic now, okay? How does a person or company formulate an AI strategy?
Hi, thanks, Harold. I think we're all here and we can all agree that it's an accepted norm that data is the new oil. However, surprisingly, the research that was published by Tom Davenport and Randy Bean showed that the organization successful in leveraging their number one intangible asset data is low and declining. So oftentimes you hear people, their strategy is, I've culminated and freed my data from their silos into a repository, into a data lake. And then I try and find AI use cases that would allow me to get value out of it. However, the approach I recommend, or I have had success leveraging, is turning it on its head. You need to start with finding a business outcome that you want to align with, and then formulate your AI strategy. I recommend a 4-step cycle: build, execute, which is what a lot of what Robert was sharing, govern, and then innovate. And I'll go into each of these in a bit more detail. When I talk about build means finding a business goal and then identifying use cases. For example, the business goal might be, I want to increase sales by 20%. So when you identify a use case, your use case should be relevant, defined, viable, complex, and at scale. What I mean by each of them: relevant, for example, it could range from attracting new customers, cross-selling to existing customers, or creating identifying new sales channel. Those would be, if my goal was to increase sales, those could be relevant use cases that I could target. It needs to be defined, because the debt spiral that Robert mentioned, you don't want to get there. You have to have set metrics, have a very clear definition of what is done going to look like for these use cases. Does not mean AI project would be done, because as one of the things we'll all learn is AI is constant. You have to retrain your model because the environment in which it's working is always changing. The next thing I mentioned was viability. Viability means that you need to be having access to good data that can be labeled, acquired, accessed, and it's of decent quality. And then complex, because we've heard from both Sunil and Robert, AI is expensive. So you want to create something where you would be justified the return on investment. So the problem needs to be complex enough. And then finally, I mentioned at scale. What that means is you should be able to have a good use case to do automation or augmentation. Decisions points are at a frequency, pace, or volume that would benefit from AI. So execution, we've talked about having a diverse team, talking about resources, technology choices, budget. We've talked about the execution between Sunil and Robert, so I wouldn't go too much into detail by itself. We could spend hours there. And then we briefly touched upon governance. I think of governance as the responsibility for ethical AI, responsibility for being aware of the risk, regulatory and reputational risk. We all remember what happened with Tay's tweets, and within an hour of launching, how it was corrupted. And finally, innovation. What I mean by innovation is your AI strategy should start with a use case that you want to accomplish and deliver on, but then using that, you need to be able to create a culture of AI within your organization so you can gain momentum from that initial success and keep going. So creating a center of excellence, training, communication are all levers you could use to create a culture of AI so that you can be innovative and have a mechanism that would allow you to continue delivering on your progress. So to me, an AI strategy starts from as simple as a point proof of concept and all the way to delivering on a culture of AI.
Wonderful. Minoo, thank you. Build, execute, govern, innovate. I think everyone here, and this is why we record these, will be able to go back and really use that as a model to having the right AI strategy for your team. So thank you, Minoo. I'm going to jump over quickly. We did get a question, and Robert already answered via the chat, but I do want to share it with everyone. A great question from one of our attendees. In less mature companies, how does one migrate or start to introduce data science such as machine learning? And everyone should be able to capture this. But Robert just said, working on small, quick problems, building your team's reputation, make sure the problem is aligned to business goals. However, don't use AI if the problem can be solved equally with other techniques. Be careful of boiling the ocean. So, it sounds like you're an organization and you're wanting to get into these waters. Find something that you can solve quickly, that is not complex, but don't overcomplicate it by using AI if you don't have to. That's at least my interpretation. But I got the nod of the head from Robert. I'm learning something here today. Yeah. So I did want to bring another question for our panel that came from our audience. And I think this got into a little bit of the communication of things as well. Are you following Agile or another framework to drive ML AI projects? Is there one that works best for these types of initiatives? So would love to get the thoughts of the panel there.
I think we sort of covered that slightly. I know Minoo talked about it, and I've talked about it as well. AI is an iterative process, because as much as you believe you've solved a problem or you think you're solving a problem, the more you look into the problem and the more you start to see the data, you start to realize there are other things that I need to know, or there are other things that potentially influence this. And one of the techniques I've used, there's a notation called precision markup notation, DMN, which goes with the business process markup notation system, BPMN version 2. And when you start to break out what data do I need, what is the actual real decisions, and most decisions are not a single layer decision, there are multiple layers. And so once you start expanding that out, you start to realize actually this problem isn't that straightforward. So you're going around iterating, going around and around and around, and then you start to realize the data you have has already been augmented or adjusted at some level for analytics, and you need to go back to the raw data to get it repulled. Common things you'll see in some of the joins is you have missing data. It's not the data that's actually missing, it's the way that it was joined. And people, when they've done some form of translation, where they've done some summarizations, all these other fun things that come through, they can all move your data off into different directions. And it's quite common to think, oh yeah, I know how to solve this and build my first model, and my first model tanked, or it may solve so much of it, but doesn't solve the complete problem. And you start digging in, you start going, what is it? What is it? What is it? And that you have to go around that iteration, because the more you learn, the more you want. But there is a callous about that. So you have to be careful about boiling the ocean, which is my previous mention. You don't keep going around in cycles, because I can be guilty of this myself as a data scientist. I've known lots of data scientists, if you leave them alone with a problem and you leave them alone, and 3 years later you can come back, they got moss growing over them, they're still working on the same problem, because they want that perfect answer.
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful of that. So from a project point of view, it is agile based. It has to be adaptive. You have to, as you learn, you find new things out. And, as we said, everyone likes to solve problems. Even your stakeholder will have a problem like, this is a business problem we want to solve. They probably have an idea how it should be solved. And there's a very good chance that may be the right answer or may be completely wrong.
Yeah. So Rob,
you've got to keep going round and round.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in, Robert, because here in the it's important to iterate. I mean, I think that's a key takeaway here. Sunil, wanted to get your thoughts, what you can share at Blue Cross, or maybe in your past experiences. Are you using Agile or some form of Agile in your AI and ML projects?
Yeah, in my view, I think data science lends itself very nicely to an agile way of working, right? And I think Robert mentioned this earlier. The challenge for AI ML professionals isn't so much to say, hey, how do I apply the bleeding edge technologies to solve a business problem. It's about what's the simplest solution that you can find to a business problem, right? And often, sometimes it may not be AI, ML, and that's perfectly all right. And what Agile enables you to do is actually have that conversation with the business stakeholder much more easily than say a waterfall approach, for example, right? It gives you also a path. So you can actually see if you do it right, if you really follow Agile process, write your user stories appropriately and all of that stuff, right? You can actually have a really good idea of exactly how you are developing the project, at what point the project is developed enough so that you can say, hey, it's ready to be deployed, and have conversation with business stakeholder because it's iterative in nature. AI, ML by definition is very iterative, right? So that's where I see Agile really work well.
Anything you wanted to add there, Minoo? Are you using some hybrid of that?
I totally agree. Agile is the way to go. So I'm in alignment.
All right. Sounds like I should be looking for agile, trained, machine learning, AI people, just for the future. But we'll cover that in another day, because what I do want to get back into is Sunil's passion for healthcare. You mentioned it earlier, that domain experience, and that you don't know why you haven't gotten into healthcare years ago. So hearing that, and each of us here, okay, whether we're in a practitioner role or just for ourselves or our loved ones, have a deep interest in healthcare. So question for you is, can you share how AI and ML has evolved and matured specific to healthcare?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many dimensions to this question, in my view, right? If you look at the maturity over the last few years has been actually pretty significant growth in that space. Traditionally, as I think pretty much everybody will agree, healthcare has lagged behind some other industries, especially when we think of finance, for example, because finance, everything is connected to the revenue output, financial output, right? So there are multiple dimensions to this, and I'll sort of cover some of these in that order. First is technological. From a technology perspective, whether it's an impact of ACA, there's so much more availability of data because you have electronic health records now everywhere. You have electronic transactions all across for like over 90% of claims these days. I think it's probably over 95, 96% in the industry are all electronic in nature. So there's a lot more data available, and along with cloud computing, it's enabling all kinds of other use cases that previously weren't possible, right? Minoo, I know, talked about data and data architecture and data stores, and so forth. We're moving increasingly away from, what was healthcare was primarily an operations heavy industry business, right? Moving away from just purely focusing on operations to saying, hey, taking those operational data and moving that into an analytics data store where you can actually do different kinds of use cases that weren't possible before. So there's been growth in that space, all right? And overall, just operationalization of AI ML itself, thinking, bringing the systems perspective, it says, hey, how do I not only just solve a prediction problem, but how does that prediction problem fit into the overall system, whether it's a program, a care management program that may be launched, or whether it's actually an operational system in which the predictions are going. So there's a lot of growth and maturities in that space. So we can see now AI ML solutions actually directly impacting operational workflows in a way that's leading to better efficiencies. And every dollar saved in operational efficiencies is a dollar that we can feed to either reduce our premiums for members, so increase affordability. So the affordability as an underlying overarching lens is something that we're seeing more and more, at least for us, for sure, right? And I think it's across the industry. The second area where we've matured is organizational. I think there's been a lot of maturity at the organizational level itself. Folks, we are hiring people from across different industries. That's bringing new, fresh ideas, as well as just at the organizational level, the recognition that AI ML can really solve problems, business challenges in a way that simply wasn't there before. I know 5, 6 years ago, data scientists, primarily statisticians, sat in their own silos. They solved very specific business data science problems. That has changed fundamentally, at least in the 3 years that I have seen myself for us, even at Blue Cross, there has been a real shift. And the fact that we have Data Science Center of Excellence at least speaks to that.
I see Minoo, and not to cut you off, Sunil, but I
Yeah.
see Minoo smiling there, and I am just curious, have we seen that shift where data science and
You're back, Harold.
oh, did you lose me for a second there?
Yes, we did.
Wonderful. I don't know if you guys can hear me right now. You can. So just asking if you're seeing the shift of AI, of data analytics and AI being brought back into the mainstream of being brought into the mainstream of a company instead of on that island. You mentioned that, Sunil. Are others seeing that as well?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things when you start looking at how data science is used, and I think data science is too encompassing right now. We have to break that down a little bit more into what we call business users, or more domain-specific users versus machine learning engineers versus statisticians, and that allow people to break out a little bit more across those. Because trying to expect someone to be everything in every single part it's a lot of burden to put on someone. It's a lot of development, a lot of training, and a lot of experience that people don't really have the time to get to do that until they've done a 20-30 year career. So how you build those out, having a core center of what I'd call escalation data scientists, the machine learning engineers, the people that can tweak models, that can understand, a subject expert can build with no code a simple system that starts answering their problem, and maybe answers, say, 85% of the problem, but there's still that 15%. How do we tweak it? Having your core center people working on those pieces is really key and core. Having some core people who work on AI operations, it's how to build all those data pipelines, making sure that everything is reusable, making sure everything's documented, making sure those models in production are running, and they're running at a level that is expected by that customer or consumer, and how do they keep all that going? So those things can be done by more traditional central teams, but pushing more and more out to your real subject matter experts, your day-to-day business users, is really key and useful, because if you can get them to be able to build non-coded models based on their experience, to say, oh, I know this, and this, put them together, and they're able to build a model and start using something, that also gets adoption. Because remember, it's change management as well. It's not that we have all this beautiful code out here that's been built by these amazing people that are very talented, very knowledgeable, but how do we get the adoption? And the way you get the adoption is by getting your salesperson or an engineer or an agent who does this work day in, day out, and they're able to say, okay, this is my workload. If I put these together and I get this outcome, can it build me a model? Oh, yes, it is doing that. And they put some corrections in, do some QA around it. That gets it working, and that gets them bought in, and they become more knowledgeable about how AI works. And actually, what I found also is that the more they become knowledgeable, the more now they become interested in statistics. Because I guarantee you, if I sit down with the crowd today and we go, okay, put your hands up if you like calculus, not many people are going to put their hands up. Those hardcore data scientists, oh yeah, we love calculus, but do we use it every day? No, we don't, but we do love it. But you don't want to put people off who may have not had a great experience with math, because there's a lot of things can be done with no code solutions today that helps get them there, and then use a central team to be able to take that to the next level if needed.
Robert, thank you. And hearing that perspective, I did not have my hand up for calculus, but I'm fascinated by this field. We're flying through this event, so I want to make sure we hit on a few key areas. And Minoo, going to bring it back to you. We've introduced these concepts of AI and ML. We've shared how it can help us advance technically and the great features it can bring. We have not discussed ethics. Can you share with the audience what ethical AI is, and just as importantly, why we should care?
Yeah, it's when we talk about AI, ethics is very tightly coupled, and I'm sure my co-panelists and anybody on the call who is involved with creation of AI has wondered, how can we avoid invading people's privacy? Or are there any legal implications of using AI in this way? Or what sort of consent do I need to from my customers, users, employees, and even to ensure AI is free of bias and discrimination? So I recommend a multi-pronged approach. We touched upon diverse team, and diverse team needs to be vertically and horizontally, and also not just from a expertise perspective, as Sunil mentioned, even making sure people who have had depth of experience in the industry you're doing, people having the technical know-how, even the senior executives in the organization need to be part of the team. Even your operations teams need to be part of it. So a very broad and diverse team is one. Train, retrain, and your model and test accuracy. Oftentimes the fallacy people have that is that you with AI is like it's a traditional project, and Robert touched on it. You deploy something, it's not done. The environment in which AI is working is constantly evolving. So you have to constantly retrain and retrain your model and test the efficacy of the model in the environment that it is in. And you have to use a diverse data set to train the model so that you can ensure it is taking into account all different perspectives. And it is also oftentimes a lot of organizations find value in having off-the-shelf AI modules incorporated, and that's a perfectly good way to go about it. But understanding data and the validation process leveraged is important to make sure you are developing an ethical AI. And we've talked, like I've covered a lot around ethics, but I do also want to touch on when is it important to have explainable AI? Not all scenarios, right? Explainable AI or ethical AI needs to be something when you're making decisions about people. We've had instances, AI-based interviews, loan approvals, college admissions, medical diagnosis. You have to have ethical AI. When AI makes closed loops decisions with important consequences, like I touched on autonomous driving before, or delivery drones, Robert's area, AI and other use cases or regulations like GDPR and things like that, that's when you absolutely have to have explainable AI. But now when you are talking about leveraging AI to generate ideas or insights that would be used and validated by a team of people before action, it doesn't need to undergo the same level of scrutiny. Another example might be when you're doing product recommendations. So when I'm on a website, I get recommendations of other things I might like. There, do you need ethical AI? Not to the same level when somebody is doing a diagnosis of whether I have looking at my X-ray and making a diagnosis. So ethical AI is very important. There are layers or tiers within it that you should be aware of when you talk about ethical AI. And with that, I'm going to open it up, like revert it back to you, Harold. And I was wondering if Robert and Sunil might have other thoughts.
When you were reverting back to me, I thought you wanted my opinion on it. And, I was a little worried there. So Sunil, please jump in.
Oh, ethical AI and just fairness in AI is so important to the domain that I work in, healthcare, especially every health insurance company and healthcare in general has care management solutions, care management programs, for example, where any prediction we make for who is at risk of readmissions, for example, needs to be fair. It's important to have that. And not only that, as I was saying earlier, there's a system level thinking that we need to be aware of. It's not just that your predictions are fair, those predictions go into a program. So you have to make sure every aspect of the program actually doesn't introduce bias, right? So, and that's where it's important to make sure each component of the system is fair, and then have that really rigorous monitoring and ongoing evaluation of whether or not the predictions continue to be fair, and the outreach, for example, continues to be fair, and we don't introduce biases. In healthcare in particular, your utilization is typically always impacted by access to healthcare. So there is built-in bias in some sense in data that you have. So you have to make sure that the models that you built really compensate for the bias that may be present if you only use data that's based on utilization of healthcare resources, for example. So it's a complex topic. It's something that we really pay huge attention to, and it's increasingly becoming important in the industry.
Yeah, it seems like we could do a whole hour on ethical AI, certainly. I know we're about at time, so what I would ask, and Robert, we'll start with you. We'd love to just get a parting shot, 30 seconds, something that you want to either leave the audience with or you're most passionate about as it relates to AI. And Robert, we'd love to get your thoughts as we conclude.
Yeah, so the big thing I'm passionate about is bringing machine learning, AI, and data science to everyone. So my parting shot is for everyone. You don't have to be a math major. You don't have to be a computer scientist. There are multiple applications out there that are codeless. Nine, Orange, SPSS. These all packages that allow you to bring models, little modules together. You drop and drag them together, and you can build models. You can do all sorts of great analytics with those. Use those. Get to know those. You don't have to know the math first. But, what will happen is like everything else, if you want to learn to cook, go and eat some food first to understand what you like, what you don't like. And then you go, oh, I'd like to learn how to cook that. And then work your way down. You don't go off and start taking French cuisine, a college level class when you don't even know what type of food you like. And so please, if you're really interested, go try those different applications, go learn, go do stuff. There's lots of resources online. Lots of free resources online. You don't have to pay for it to start learning to do those. And, it's all about problem solving at the end of the day. So that, for me, that's the big one.
Thank you, Robert. And we were going to talk a little bit about getting people involved in this field that don't have that background. You touched on that just now. What I want to put out there for the audience is if you've got questions that didn't get answered, or you want introductions to the panelists or others that attend, let us know. We want this to be collaborative as we move forward with this group. So just wanted to get that out there. Minoo, would love your thoughts as we conclude.
I put it in chat. I think we've touched on great topics of AI, general education, understanding. How do you build it? What are the pitfalls? I think one follow-on I would recommend, Harold, is demystifying AI and identifying use cases, because oftentimes the big problem is people think it's a solve it all industry and every problem can be solved because it's the shiny new tool on the block. So I would love for us to be able to get a bit more technical and detailed into where would be a good use case for AI. And unfortunately, time doesn't allow, but I would have loved to talk about ChatGPT. That's taking AI by storm right now. Yep. So we've
got another discussion in us, so I think we can move on to that. Thank you, Minoo, and Robert. Thank you as well. Really appreciate your insight, and I know the audience does as well. Sunil,
I would say that be curious. I think that's really to me the most important attribute for an AI ML person. There is just so much to do. There's so many use cases you can think of in every industry. It's amazing how many use cases we find every day as we engage with business stakeholders within healthcare, and it was the same in finance in every industry. So there's just so much to learn, and as I heard from Robert and Minoo, just get started. There are a lot of resources out there, and it's just a question of where do you begin? Just pick up one thing and try that out.
Yep. Be curious. I love it. Well, I know our time is concluded. I just want to, on behalf of Seneca Resources, want to thank those who have attended. We appreciate your questions and you taking some time to be with us today. The panel, Sunil, Minoo, Robert, really can't thank you enough for your insight. And we all are, we're all a bit smarter and more aware of AI. So wishing everyone a very happy holiday season. And as I mentioned, January, we're gonna have a cloud discussion, more info to come, but look forward to connecting with everyone soon. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.